first episode of The Music Man. In today's episode, I'm just going to briefly demonstrate the most basic elements necessary to create a beat. And just to give you a brief analysis of what we're working with today, this instrument is called the MPK 61 and it's made by Akai Professional. It has 61 keys, semi-weighted, which means when I press on it, it's not extremely light like the flimsy keyboards, but it's also not as heavy as the grand pianos, and it's just right, at least for my purposes. So I love this MIDI key station or controller. And what MIDI means, for those of you who are not familiar with these kind of keyboards, a MIDI controller means that it's a controller that triggers a note that is set inside of a DAW, a digital audio workstation. Basically, there are no sounds within this instrument itself. The noise that you hear, or not noise, but the notes that you hear, comes from what I triggered in the computer. So anyway, we'll get into that in a much more advanced lesson. For now, we're just going to talk about the most basic elements necessary for a beat. Now, we're going to do a hip-hop beat. Hip-hop, rap, whatever you want to call it. Most of these beats somewhat start around 88 and they go to about 92 BPMs, beats per minute. And so we're going to do a beat today that's set around 90 beats per minute, and also we're going to break down the elements of this beat. The first element that I always like to start off with is the drum. So I'm just going to quickly trigger that into the controller and you'll be able to hear it. And right now the snares, that's what you hear, but I'm going to put the drums in. Okay, so we have the drums. I always like to begin with my drums. That's how I create the patterns. Drums are very basic. You know, you can play them. You can play them like. And one way that I do the drums, especially when I don't have any other instrument, is I try to think of the snare in my mind, where the snare is going to fit. So, for example, if I'm playing the drum like this, that's where the snare would go, right after. Boom, boom, pop. Boom, boom, pop, or bop, bop, bop. So basically, I do the drums, and I always try to hear the other sounds in my head as I'm preparing the first layer or the first instrument. So the drums, basically what I did was took 3 separate drums. That's the first drum. That's the second drum. And that's the third drum. Took all 3 drums and I layered them. Basically put them on top of each other. I stacked them on top of each other to create a thicker sound. And this is what I got. So you can see it's a very basic drum pattern. And you don't really feel anything yet because the other instruments haven't been included. Obviously I can hear, or at least I know where the snares are going to go. So that's what we're going to do next, is place the snares into this beat. So we have the snares. Of course, I love the snares. What I actually did with this particular snare was I added just a little reverb. Yeah, perfect. So I'm going to do exactly what I did with the drums. I'm going to take that snare, this snare, and also this snare, and I'm going to layer them or stack them together and come up with this kind of a sound. Yeah. Now when you listen to that snare, it sounds very stiff, very dry, as if I'm hitting the snare drum like this. And we all know that real humans playing real instruments don't play instruments like that. There's always going to be some slight miscalculation in the rhythm, and that's great because it adds to the realistic sound of the beat. So for example, when I play the snare the way it sounds now, it sounds like this. Very stiff. Now here's how it's going to sound when I took another snare and slightly moved it away from the rhythm of the other snares, just to give it a, a slight bounce. Here's how it sounds. And before I do that, again, here's the original. Very stiff. Here's how it sounds when I add the other snare. So yeah, hopefully you guys can hear the difference. It sounds a little bit more bouncy, a little bit more realistic. So anyway, we got the drums, we got the snares. The next component we're going to add is the hats. Hats are very important. Percussion. You need some shakers, you need some cymbals, you need something in there to help place the rhythm of the beat. Okay, so that's one of the hats that I have. This is another hat. And that's an open hat. So that's the hat, and this is basically what I did with the hats. You're not really going to hear how everything is going to sound until I put it together. So this is the drum and the snare combined. Now we're going to add the hats. Yeah, so you can start to hear the beat come together now. And all I have is the drums, the snare, and the hats. That's it. So that's basically it right there. And the reason why I said that's basically it is because for me, whenever I'm done with the drums, the snare, and the hat, it just leaves open a huge variety of sounds that I can now implement into the track. And with each sound, it creates an entirely new vibe. And I'll just give you an example. I'm going to play, again, just the drums, the snare, and the hat. And I'm going to play different notes with different instruments. And you guys will get a little drift of what I'm talking about. We're going to add like a piano, basically. So you see, that's how a piano sounds. That's one fill. Let's see what else we can do. Let's add a different instrument. Okay, that's a synth. Okay, let's try that. Whoa, that sounds a little crazy right there. Okay, so I'm just having fun, guys, but now we're gonna get to the real meat of this beat that I did. Well, I chopped up a sample basically, and when I chopped the sample, I spread it among these keys right here particularly. Now, I know what you're thinking, it sounds like chaos, and yes, it does, but again, I chopped each section of the beat to a particular note because I know exactly what I'm going to do with it. And we're going to talk about that later on in the advanced topics. Yeah, but for now, you still have the most basic element of the beat, which is the drum, the snare, and the hat. And I'm just going to play that for now and show you how it's going to sound with the sample as I play it. So, this is the drum, the snare, and the hat. Remember, the samples are still within here, so I'm just going to play around and try to find a good melody. Okay, so there you go. That's the sample played along with the drum track that we just created. So pretty much that's it. And I know it sounds very simple, but it is once you get the hang of it. And of course, we're going to go into that, with the future episodes of The Music Man. I'm going to demonstrate how the drum tracks are laid and how they're created, and I'm going to go into the very specifics of each element. But for now, I just wanted, to explain the most basic elements that you would hear in almost every hip-hop beat, which is the drum. You need a drum pattern. And then, of course, the hats or the percussion, because it doesn't have to be hats. It can be shakers. It can be anything that fills in that percussion. And then, of course, you need a snare. And the snare can consist of various types of sounds that goes along with the drum rhythm to create that rhythm. Once you have those elements created, you can simply do what I did earlier, which was play the piano and create your track original from scratch with no samples. Or you can do like what I'm doing today and import a sample chopped up and played along with the track. So it's really up to you. There's so many different avenues that you can go into once you learn the most basic elements of creating the track. And so, to finish it off, I'm going to go ahead and play the finished version of this track that I did. And I'm also going to put some live chops and mixes and things of that nature as we end the show. So again, thank you guys for watching. This is the very first episode of The Music Man. And I will definitely be showing you guys more of not just this, but other instruments and other techniques and different ways that you can make beats. Until then, I will catch you guys later. Take care, enjoy, and have fun. Let's go.